Testing, testing. 1, 2. Studio Steve back here on Monday, May the 26th, after a weekend of a couple of game threes. Let's go over both series, both conferences. A lot to take away, but let's quickly dive into it. There's a lot of information to talk about. Look, not much to take away from a 40-point dismantling loss if you're the Thunder. I mean, you're on the road. There's no distractions. Regroup, watch some film, do some activities as a team together, realize who you are, loosen up, get back to it for game 4. They have been on the this is the first time I should say they're on the opposite end of a blowout victory. They've been kicking teams' ass all season and all playoffs. They've had a couple of lopsided wins in the playoffs. This is the first time that I've seen this happen to them. Granted, there was a game earlier in the season where Minnesota came back from down 20 in the fourth quarter to beat OKC, and that was the first time they kind of looked human for the entire season, to be quite honest. And then, of course, a couple of times in this playoff run, they kicked Denver's ass. They kicked Minnesota's ass. They kicked Memphis's ass, and they finally got their asses kicked. And I think this is a good sign. I think this is a good thing for OKC to feel that tension, to feel that nervousness, to feel that weight on you, to regroup and get back to understanding the urgency, to understanding what is at stake here. They're 2 games away from getting to the finals. They didn't meet the intensity. They didn't match the moment and meet the moment that obviously the Timberwolves came out with in game 3. They came out with a massive surge of energy and intensity and understood the moment clearly. Now, I do want to say this as well. I want to go back and revisit some of the things that I've been looking at throughout the course of this series and just touch on a couple of them, not all of them. But one of the things I've been talking about this whole time was whether or not Anthony Edwards will display that signature game that I was looking for from him. Minnesota, I think, always had this gear. I think we were all waiting to see whether they can shift into it and when they were going to shift into it. Desperate times call for desperate measures, as the old saying says. They played like a team that was on the verge of going down 0-3. Ant came out with, I thought, his signature game of the playoffs, finally. And they needed it. And there was no better time to pull it out than this game. Let's quickly look at the numbers here. 30 points for Ant, 12 for 17 shooting, 5 for 8 from 3. And man, his jumper looked clean. Those threes look clean. He had the lift and elevation, the follow through. The shit was hitting the bottom of the net. That looked like Ant-Man that we were used to seeing. 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Just an overall fantastic game offensively. But I think more than the stats, the more important factor that I'm looking at here was his demeanor. Just the way that he played, the level of intensity. He finally came through and played with that swagger, that fuck you kind of mentality that he always plays with, that I'm better than you, you ain't better than me. He finally brought that out. I feel like I've been needing that. I've been wanting that from Ant. He did that all last playoffs, whether it was Dallas, whether it was Phoenix, whoever was in his way. He's played with a lot more maturity, I will say, in these playoffs. He's allowing his team to get involved before he gets involved, knowing that he can get his shot off. But today, and I think I talked about on the last pod, was exactly what I was talking about. Sometimes you just got to say, fuck all of that noise. Give me the ball. Let me dictate. Let me get downhill. Let me score. Everyone else jump on the cape and follow suit. That's exactly what happened. Sometimes you need your leader to demonstrate that action, that level of intensity for the rest of the guys to come alive. At home, the role players always play better. I know we were looking at DiVincenzo, Reed, not playing, and Alexander Walker actually has played fairly well throughout this series, but Reed hadn't hit a 3, and so some of those guys see the leader being the leader and get fueled by his energy and his level of enthusiasm. So I think there was a lot of that from Ant, where his swagger was finally back, his ballsiness was finally back. There was a little pushing match that he had with Lou Dort in the third quarter. It all started actually on the other end of the floor, on the offensive end of the floor. Rudy Gobert was trying to set a screen on Lou Dort. Lou Dort kept swatting at his hands like he was swatting flies. And that little pushing match then persisted to Ant and Lou Dort and happened all the way down the floor to the other end on defense. And then Ant finally gave him like the last push and gave him this death stare that was maniacal and was just like, oh shit, he coming to fuck y'all up now. if that death stare is the way that Ant is going to be playing for the rest of the playoffs, every team should be worried. So he finally had that. He finally had that come out. And I think that's scary if you're OKC. Again, if you're OKC, you don't want to take too much away from this. 40-point loss. You got your ass kicked. No one played well. They didn't meet the intensity. They didn't meet the urgency. Obviously, the Wolves came out with that, and it proved the series is alive. I mean, this series was always going to be like this, I feel like. Um, Sometimes we too quickly write teams off or write players off. Julius Randle, got benched in the entire fourth quarter of game 2, came back like a former All-Star would. Had a great showing. Was hitting threes, was being aggressive, was taking on matchups that, quite honestly, the Thunder can't meet his aggression in the post if they're guarding him with, in all the respect to Caruso's of the world and everyone else that plays bigger than they are. But Julius Randle's just a big fucking dude. He's strong. He's aggressive. He can score. So when he has those mismatches, I love to see big guys take advantage of that. And he did that, and he scored willingly, as did the rest of the team. So yeah, there was, and I want to go back really quickly to Ant as well, because I had wrote this down. I think that there were 2 significant plays that really showed his edge and his enthusiasm to win this game. And that was both early in the first, where he had multiple efforts to beat J-Dub to a loose ball on the sidelines and then picked that up and had a nice 2-hand dunk. And then just a few possessions later, he blitzed Lou Dort at the top of the 3-point line. It was a pick and roll, and he just came fucking flying around the edge. Almost like an offensive lineman, just came flying around the edge and stole the ball off Lou Dort, and then went in for the most casual dunk you've ever seen Ant do. But it was just that level of enthusiasm and intensity that is required for the rest of the team to be like, yo, let's go. If that motherfucker is playing this hard, we need to play this hard. And the leader spoke, and the leader showed his actions and what his team was capable of doing, what they needed to do to get out of that game with a victory. And they did it. I don't think they're satisfied. I think they're going to come back next game and play with this same level intensity. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how OKC matches that intensity, especially with that crowd. That crowd was crazy in Minnesota. A couple of other encouraging signs from the Wolves. Again, their defense finally showed up in a way that speaks to their strengths. They were dominant and they were fearless. I think that was the most important thing with Minnesota, is they looked fearless in this game. I think in the first 2 games, I don't want to say they were playing fearfully, but they weren't playing with this same level of edge and intensity that they normally show and that they had shown early in the playoffs. I think OKC does that to you. I think just the way that their defense plays and then blitzes you and the energy that they play with and the amount of people they have in their rotation, they just hit you with so many different shots that you just don't know where it's coming from, when it's coming, and how to deal with it in the moment. And I think that this game 3 was a real sign of Minnesota easing into the game and being like, all right, we've been hit with the hardest punch, so now it's our turn to react. It's our turn to hit back. And they did that convincingly. Another couple of encouraging things here with the Wolves. Naz Reid finally hit a 3. He was 0 for 12 in the first 2 games, obviously not shooting his best. He was 2 for 3 in this game, as was DiVincenzo hitting 2 for 2. Alexander Walker as well with 2 threes. Then, of course, the X factor of the evening, and in that game, Terrence Shannon Jr., who none of us have ever heard of unless you watch college sports, and would have known that he was a good NCAA player. This is what makes the playoffs so exciting. Terrence Shannon Jr. had no run in these playoffs. All of a sudden he gets thrown into the most important game, I would say, of the Timberwolves season so far. If they were to go down 0-3, it's lights out. So this was huge confidence builder for him, that Coach Finch decided, you know what, in one of the biggest games of our season, if not the biggest game of our season, we're going to throw you in and see what you do early too. I'm not talking about late in the game when shit was out of control. I'm talking about early he came in. The supporting cast really showed up. This guy did a huge chunk of that. Scored 15 points in 13 minutes. That is super impressive for a young guy to come in who gets no looks. And look, I know it's a blowout win, but if you can show that kind of confidence in your young players, which is funny to say because he's actually older than Ant, but if you can show that confidence in your bench players, your young players, your supporting players, you may need those guys. You may need 6 to 10 points from them in a different game later in the playoffs, later in this series, that might be the deciding factor. So, um, really, really, really huge win for Minnesota. Really, really huge sign of confidence that their team came back and played, like I say, with this level of fearlessness, with this level of edge, with the level of intensity that they needed, that they know they're capable of playing with. And I think that we all know they're capable of playing with. OKC, like I say, just fucking hits you with so many shots in the first couple of games. It's really hard to recover, but Minnesota recovering might be a sign of things to come. We'll see. You can't count OKC out. They've been the best team in basketball, tape to tape, wire to wire, the entire season. So game 4, man, let me tell you, I personally think game 4s are the most pivotal and the most important games in a 7-game series. So this next game 4 coming up is huge. Either it's 2-2 by the end of it, and then it's essentially kind of 0-0 in a best of 3 series at that point, or it's 3-1, and the team that's ahead has the, what are the odds? I can't remember what the odds are. The odds are that you typically lose when you're down 3-1, and you always lose when you're down 3-0. So this was a huge win for the Wolves to come back and decisively have this victory at home. So we'll look forward to game 4, and we're going to jump into the other game because there's not much to take away from a 40-point victory other than the team that won kicked the shit out of the other one. Real quickly here, Pacers and Knicks played 2 games over the weekend. I want to touch on game 2 before I hop into game 3. Game 2, obviously, right off the bat here, Pascal Siakam, 39 points. Huge start to get the Pacers on track in that game, and then all the clutch and important shots down the stretch. Just a masterful performance by Siakam. I've personally had the privilege of watching him play his entire career, being a Raptors fan here in Canada. Remembering when he won the G League championship and the G League MVP for that championship, and then winning the Most Improved Player and the NBA championship in the following year in 2019. And then every year after that, just getting better and better and better at something. If it was one year, it was rebounding. One year, it was interior passing. The next year, it was screening. The next year, it was shooting. And then he's made multiple All-Star teams across that time as well. Just a really great career that he's had so far in his young NBA career. 2019 as well, hitting the game-winning basket in Game 6 against Golden State Warriors in that championship game with a Euro step that really took fucking Draymond out of his jockstrap. And you know, he's put together such a great career already in his young NBA career. He's going into year 10, I think, and it just seems like this guy's got a lot more to give and a lot longer to go. So great game for as we used to call him in his Toronto Raptors days, Spicy P. I don't know what nickname they have for him in Indiana anymore. I haven't heard anything, but Spicy P. Pascal Siakam, masterful game. Game 2, 39 points, leading the way for the Pacers. A couple of other quick takeaways from that game. Look, these games have been so close. I've talked about it on the last pod. The margins of victory, this slim. The margins of victory, the margins of error for these games to go one way or the other. Either one of these teams could be winning this series. I mean, it could be either way. The Knicks could have won the first 2 games. You know, these games have been much closer than would be indicated in headlines by talking about huge rallying wins and collapses and so on and so forth. But a couple of things talking about the margins of error and slim margins of error to win these games. I want to point out 2 things about game 2 that I thought were decisive in the Pacers winning. And not that these 2 things mean that, you know, had they gone differently that the Knicks would have won, but they were important factors in the game. And both things were late in the game. Let me change the banner down here, actually. We're just going to pop over to here now. Sorry about that. I had the Minnesota Thunder banner running on the bottom, but now we got proper stats here for the Pacers Knicks. The 2 things that happened late in the game, I thought were really pivotal points to mention about game 2 Pacers Knicks. Tibbs elected to bench Cat for most of the fourth and then bring him in with 2 minutes and 55 seconds to go, which I thought was a mistake. You really want to have your stars in there for at least 5 minutes, if not longer, but at least 5 minutes to go in the quarter. especially when the game is as back and forth as it is. You got to fight fire with fire when you're playing a team like Indiana. They score like nobody's business. You need all of your scoring on the floor at all times if you're playing the Pacers. And in the case of the Knicks, that means Jalen Brunson, and that also means Cat being on the floor, being productive. Cat's been torching the Pacers all season. And for what it's worth, he's been playing extremely well against them in this series as well. Got to have him on the floor. Bringing him in, I thought, at 255 was questionable decision. And the other thing I thought was a really decisive moment in that game, late in the fourth quarter with 10 seconds to go, off of a made free throw. The Knicks elected to not call a timeout and run a play with 10 seconds to go. Now, the reason I think that was a bit of a mistake, you have a timeout to use. It's coming off of a made free throw. So you have time to get a breather. You get your guys back to the bench. You set up an actual play on the drawing board. Instead, they sink the free throw, Pacers. New York inbounds the ball. Well, now New York is working against a set defense. The Pacers weren't even pressuring. They were all back. So now they're all set. And you know exactly what your positioning is on the floor. You know where all the players are on the floor. It's not a situation where if it was a missed free throw and then you just let the guys kind of improvise, that I understand, especially when you have a playmaker like Jalen Brunson. You can get that thing off the rebound, get it out on the run, and now just let him do his thing. This was against a set defense. Brunson comes down, heaves up a really difficult shot, I thought. Turner grabs a rebound, sinks a free throw, game over. So a couple of, again, the margins of victory, man. Like these games, like I say, we look at the headlines and we see the massive collapses, we see the big comebacks. These games have been so fucking close, like really, really close. And both teams have played like this throughout the playoffs. So I think I'd mentioned in previous pods, like you can't be safe with a 14, 15, 20, 25 point lead against either one of these teams. You got to blow this shit out like 30, 40 point lead the same way the Wolves did in that last game to feel comfortable, because both of them are capable of coming back. And oddly enough, both of them have proven that against each other in this very series, game 1, game 3. So let's just jump into game 3. New York was the first team to flinch. And what I mean by that is they changed something about their identity. In this case, their starting lineup. Mitchell Robinson was in their starting lineup for game 3. They also went to the bench throughout this game. Tibbs actually played people from the bench who hadn't had any run. DeLon Wright, former Raptor. What's up? And Landry Shamet. Now, these are two serviceable veteran NBA players whose legs couldn't be any fresher because they've just been sitting and waiting, prepped and ready to go every single game, just getting no run. And let me tell you, they were fresh. They look fresh. And they brought a certain level of intensity and a certain level of energy that I thought wasn't matched from the Pacers bench, at least not late in the game. Maybe earlier in the game, the Pacers bench was active and energetic, namely TJ McConnell, as usual. But late in the game, those veteran Knicks dudes came through and supplied some amazing defensive stops and some great pressure and some great hustle plays. That's the kind of stuff that in a 7-game series, just in a single game, you can't take for granted. Sometimes that is the margin which helps you become the victor. I thought Miles Turner was very assertive, not only in the first quarter, but the entire game. I thought that was really telling of his leadership, of his veteran presence, to know the situation, to know that they're up 2-0. And then if they go up 3-0, it's virtually impossible for any team to come back, especially this Knicks team that was looking a little deflated. Didn't really look like they had the energy. Didn't really look like they had just the energy. Just didn't look like they had it. Jalen Brunson has looked tired at a number of different points in this series. And you got to just keep your fucking foot on the pedal, man, if you're the Pacers. And you just got to take them out, man. When you get that 17-point lead, stretch that to 27-30. There was towards the end of the first half, the Knicks went on a 10-3 run, which I thought really and Reggie Miller was talking about this on the broadcast as well. It really changed the momentum of the second half of that game. 2, 3, 4 minutes can make all the difference in the world in a playoff game, especially with teams like these that go on huge runs. And you see the lead changes, and you see the runs that these teams go on throughout the course of a game. Anything can happen at any time. You gotta just stick to the program. There was a lot of opportunities in this game for Indiana to stretch out this lead. I thought two areas where they could have continued to take advantage of that were Miles Turner on mismatches in the post. Again, talking about when big guys get that smaller guy on you in the post, take advantage of that. You need to get to the free throw line. You need to get to the basket. You need to get a hoop. You got to get the other team in foul trouble, which they did with New York really early. In the first quarter, the Pacers were in the bonus with 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. Deuce McBride picked up his third foul at that point. And at 3:30 to go in the first quarter, Deuce McBride already had 3 fouls. And that led to 6 points off of free throws for the Pacers. You got to keep that pressure on. You got to keep that pressure on. The additional thing, not only taking advantage of the mismatches down low for Miles Turner, of which they got quite a few and missed a handful of them. Secondly, got to use Siakam. He is your best half-court player. At times, Indiana looked like they were scrambling. They were just kind of running around frantically and not really sure where to go with the ball. Pascal has proven time and time again to be your best half-court player in the post. Got to at least get him a touchdown there and see if you can run something on a cut, get a guy open on a three. If not, just allow him to operate and try to get a basket. He clearly proved it in game 2 that he's capable of doing that. So if you look at it, this is kind of like a tale of two halves. This matchup, the first half seemed to be going in Indiana's favor in every way, shape, or form. Cat 0 points in the first quarter. TJ McConnell, great minutes in the second quarter, getting to the mid range, getting into the paint as he always does. 2 feet in the paint, McConnell. That's what this guy is, man. He just gets to the heart of the defense over and over and over again. The Knicks couldn't match his speed or his enthusiasm in the first half. That's what I had written down here as I was watching that game. Cat had some bad fouls. Again, as is pretty on par with the way he's played this playoffs. And then the regular starters, again, going back to the opening point, like Mitchell Robinson getting into the starting lineup meant that the actual Knicks starters didn't play together until 6 minutes and 34 seconds of the second quarter. So up until that time, they just had a bunch of different dudes running in and out of the lineup. So not a lot of continuity. I mean, you do get the benefit of having fresher legs, but not a lot of continuity. And with 6:10 to go in the second, the Pacers get another great challenge, which ends up being the third foul on Cat. So Cat had 3 fouls with 6:10 to go in the second quarter. Let's just think about that for a second here. Carlisle wins another one. Neesmith was playing fantastic defense on Jalen Brunson, I thought, all night. His ability to pressure him 94 feet over and over and over again, his ability to withstand being screened and just getting around screens was phenomenal. He was all over Brunson in the entire game up until his ankle injury in the third quarter, which we're going to have to keep an eye on and get back to a little later. But his ability to shut him down and Cat's ability to be kind of, herky-jerky and all over the place mentally with picking up really shitty fouls, not scoring well at all. In the first half, combined, Brunson and Towns were 15 points, 4 for 16 for shooting, 4 fouls on Brunson in 17 minutes, and 3 fouls on Cat in 13 minutes. So the first half wasn't going the Knicks' way. The first half was definitely all in favor of the Pacers. The Pacers bench was outscoring them. The Knicks' bench 23-7 in the first half, and went on a 13-0 break towards the end of the first half as well. That really opened up a lead. And then we talk about the second half, a tale of two halves. And then the second half, that 10-3 run that the Knicks went on in the last few minutes of the second quarter carried over for the rest of the way. Their defense was extremely improved in the third and fourth quarter. It was like an entirely different team. Like it just looked like an entirely different team was out there. They certainly weren't playing that level of defense with that level of intensity or edge earlier in the game. And whatever happened at halftime, these motherfuckers woke up and they took it to them on both ends of the floor, defense to offense, right? Defense to offense. A lot of times when we talk about teams being great defensively, usually their defense opens up opportunities on offense, whether that's fast break points, whether that's just a level of confidence. And at the same time, depleting the confidence of your opposition by not allowing them to score. That TJ McConnell burst of energy that they had in the first half sort of dissipated. That didn't really come back. The Knicks playing solid defensive game meant that Indiana had to get more into a half court set. Indiana being in that half court set, not as comfortable as when they're running and gunning. Again, they got away from their mismatches with their big guy. They got away from giving Pascal the ball in the post. And before you know it, we're into the fourth quarter. Deuce McBride comes in. Before we can get to the fourth quarter, Deuce McBride, I thought Tibbs got away from him when he got his third foul early in the first and sat him for long stretches of the remainder of the game. Then all of a sudden decided to bring him in towards the end of the third. End of the third, Deuce McBride goes on a 7-0 run himself for New York, draws a charge within that as well. So goes 7 points straight, draws a charge. Quarter ends, fourth quarter opens up. It's the fucking cat show. Karl Anthony Towns scores 20 points in the fourth, and he was doing it everywhere. He was getting in the post. He was hitting threes. He was in the mid-range. He was playing aggressively. He was playing with a level of intensity that he hadn't shown the rest of the game. They just opened it up. And Brunson was sitting most of this. Brunson was sitting with that foul trouble. He was sitting for large stretches of that fourth quarter. And it didn't really matter because Cat was holding them together. And there was a few moments in this game where I thought were really telling. Cat was at the free throw line, and I think I had mentioned it in game one. In game one, I had mentioned that there was a few moments where the Knicks players were at the free throw line, and the entire crowd was shushing each other so that the Knicks players could concentrate on scoring those free throws. Which, again, in my opinion, psychologically as a player, as someone who's played basketball my whole life, that shit is more intimidating than the crowd actually making noise. And so I'm not surprised that their players were splitting free throws at the line when that happened. What I am getting at here is there was a point where Cat was at the line in game 3 and the crowd was silent, like nervously silent. Both of these teams, like I say, these games have been so close, they could have gone either way for both teams. Both of these teams have the other team's crowd so shook that they know that they're capable of coming back. They know that they are capable of overcoming double-digit deficits, as they both have done multiple times in this playoff run, that whenever one team is starting to inch back or starting to fight back, you could just feel the nervousness in the crowd. You could just see them starting to get a little shaky, a little bit, when people do that little nervous laugh. It was starting to happen in that fourth quarter, and there was a couple of times after huge New York baskets. I feel like there was a lot of Knicks fans because after a couple of those baskets, I was like, who the fuck's cheering? Like, this is in Indiana. This is like one of the craziest buildings you could ever be in, loudest buildings. Like, who the fuck is cheering? They got some Knicks fans up in this joint. And that shows you how quiet the rest of the Indiana fans were. That if you could hear the sparsity of Knicks fans that were in that Indiana arena, shows you the level of nervousness these crowds are sitting on, because they know both teams are capable of making huge comebacks. Cat had an outstanding fourth quarter. I will point out, though, and I mentioned this earlier as well, that Cat had gotten into foul trouble early in the game. He had 4 fouls in the third. And I feel like the Pacers just went away from that. They stopped attacking him. There was a couple of moments where he actually got away with, I thought, a few plays where he didn't get a foul called on him, where he could have and should have, and which would have led to 4 or 5, potentially 6. But I feel like they got away from that from the Pacers. Like this, again, all the credit to New York for playing with the level of intensity, or raising, I should say, the level of intensity that they played with, raising their defensive pressure. But I feel like the Pacers sort of let this one slip away. They were up 17. They were doing all the right things. They were hitting the mismatches when they saw them. They were getting the ball to Siakam in the post. They were running and gunning. They were getting fouls on Cat. They were getting fouls on Brunson. And then these deep reserves came in for the Knicks, brought a surge of energy that the Pacers couldn't match. And for whatever reason, just the energy from the Pacers team itself seemed to sort of deflate as they saw the Knicks starting to raise theirs. And this is why we love the playoffs. This is why we love 7-game series. Anything can happen in any particular game. Anything can happen in a few minutes of a game. Again, that Pacers offense, when it gets to a half court set, not as strong as when they're running and gunning, and that was clearly shown in the second half of this game, especially in the fourth quarter. Again, New York's defense was great, and you can't take anything away from that. What a fucking series! What a playoff run! 2025 playoffs have been amazing. As I say, today is May the 26th. The game 4 is running tonight. Wolves and Thunder. That game should be amazing. Again, game 4s have so much significance. Either it's going to be a tied series or one team is going to go up 3-1. And we know what that means for both teams in terms of, how difficult or how easy the next couple of games are going to look, especially if you have home court advantage like OKC does. And we know that crowd is going to be rollicking, whether it's game 1 of the season or game 6 of game 4, of the Western Conference Finals. In any regard, I don't want to give any previews in terms of what I think is going to happen in today's game with the Wolves and the Thunder. Again, after a 40-point blowout, I think you just regroup, show up, and play your game. I think that Minnesota will come out with the same level of intensity. I think they need to come out with the same level of intensity. Ant needs to have the same type of signature style game if Minnesota wants to tie this up and also go back to OKC with some level of confidence on the road. Playoffs have been crazy. I will touch back with you guys after today's game, and maybe we'll wait another 2 games. Maybe we'll get game 4 of the Wolves Thunder, and we'll get game 4 of Pacers Knicks, and then come back prior to game 5. I think that sounds like a good plan, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud. If you're watching the game tonight, Wolves Thunder, enjoy it. If you've been watching these games, you know that you can't miss them because anything is bound to happen. NBA playoffs are live in effect. Studio Steve is live in effect. Thank you again to Justin Sahota for giving me the battery in my back to be like, turn that shit on and start talking about basketball. We need to hear it. Appreciate you, brother. I appreciate everyone for listening. Thank you. And we'll talk to you soon. Studio Steve, Steven Samuel, signing out. Peace.